Hi everybody, Brian O'Haron here. I'm going to be doing more talking tonight about some various subjects on this program. And first thing I want to talk about is that there's been a couple disturbing things happen this week. Not good, as far as I'm concerned, as an individual resident and citizen. Number one, there was talk at the selectmen meeting, towards the end of the selectmen meeting the other night, about one selectman being too close to the powerful Planning and Zoning Commission that to a certain extent controls our destiny in this town, in perhaps areas that it shouldn't, but it does by charter. So we have to be very careful there. If you want to see that discussion, it was tabled until the next selectmen meeting, and the Planning and Zoning Chairman will be there, and they will have it on the agenda, I think, and then they will have a discussion about the concerns with the selectmen. Now, I must also say that, in my opinion, the Planning and Zoning Commission has been packed recently by the majority in favor of environmental extremists and people from the Highland Lake District. They pay 25% of the taxes in town, so they should have a big say in things. But town people pay 75% of the taxes, so they should have an equally proportionate share in these commissions. So tune into the next selectmen meeting and see what happens there. I think it'd be a good education for you all. The next disturbing thing that happened, I was looking at the blog this morning, which I seldom do. Somebody called me and brought my attention to it. But there is a strong rumor and there is some activity that says that perhaps one of the people that's speaking up strongly in favor of selling the land to the land trust that will be at a soon to come town meeting, perhaps, I say perhaps because I don't know for sure, I only know what I see on the internet or hear rumors. Perhaps one of the individuals speaking violently in favor of this has a personal gain if it passes. Now, it's all right if you have personal gain, in my opinion, but you should disclose it to everybody when you speak or write information to the newspapers. So pay attention here, voters, and make sure you understand exactly what you're doing when you vote for or against the land trust proposal. We seem to be spending a lot of time here over the last 2 years with small, petty things in the Board of Selectmen, with some exceptions, the Gilbert School one, for example, some of the other things that were passed. But we're still spending far too little on revenue. Obtaining revenue, more profitable, recurring tax revenue. We have all the odds against us now. Just became even a little worse with all the activity in Japan and all the heat that's on around the world with the oil situation, and the dive recently in the stock market. Today I heard on television that we're in a double dip now on the real estate. It's going down again, and that hurts our town. I also heard at the select meeting the other night, and read a bit about it in the papers and on the internet, that the state is considering going back to the 10-year revaluation cycle that it had up to a few years ago. These state mandates, like having a reval every 5 years, really hurts towns, cities, states, because it costs a lot of money to do these things. Some towns pay $100,000 or so to get through this. I think we're probably one of those that spends that kind of money. So that's up in the air now, but if it stays as it is, there will be a reval in a year or so, probably starting towards the end of this calendar year. That's being discussed now. And remember, when you have a reval, the town really doesn't make much more money on it because the mill rate gets adjusted, but some individuals will pay more and some will pay less, depending upon what their property gets evaluated at, and that's largely dependent upon what properties have sold in their area over the last 5 years, especially the years closer to the revaluation. So that leads me to say that we're in deep trouble here as a town. And I say this mainly to wake you up, not to rub it in. We're backed into a corner. We have $300,000 or so in our fund balance. We have a big bond issue being discussed by the selectmen. I'll try to keep it as small as I can, I'm sure. But the original amount was about $12 million for the town garage, and they certainly need the money. That's not the question. The question is, can we get the money? Can we raise the money plus the interest? And don't forget, whenever numbers are tossed around, you have to include the interest, and most people don't do that because it makes the number look smaller until you get to the point where you actually get the information from the bond people and you find out you got to pay another 50% because of the interest. And don't forget, we did get a capital budget from the schools for about $33 million, $10 million a school or so. If we close one school down, that'll help us. I don't get too concerned about the school money because we never seemed to spend any of it on maintenance of the 3 K-8 schools. We have one less. That'll cut probably 10, 12 million out of the capital requirement for that building. Maybe not all of it. Maybe they have to do enough to keep it alive till they can do something with it. And maybe one of them can even be turned into a business park, shopping mall, or residential units that, after some reclamation, that bring some profitable revenue to our town. They can also be turned into housing units that are a drain on the town and don't produce any profitable revenue. So that's the balance that we have to be careful of there. So if you add up the capital alone, you're up near 45 million plus interest. I'll just say let's throw in another 15 million for interest over the 20 years. Getting up there. A mill, by the way, is $800,000. So, in bonds, they work a funny way that we can't describe on this program, but it isn't linear. So we have to wait until we get the information, decide what bonds we're going to be trying to get, which capital we're trying to get, and then we can get a rough idea what the interest is. But that always pops up at the last minute for a lot of reasons. One is because it's scary to the taxpayers. And nobody wants to scare the taxpayers when they're trying to get bond issues. The other problem we have with the budget is The expense side of the budget. I'm not going into a lot of details on this program because that's not what this program is about. We'll talk at a higher level. We always have the 65% of our budget, that's the schools system. 65, 64, 66, whatever it turns out to be. Much of that is funding by the state, usually around $6 million or so, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. But the last time around, the whole town part of the budget was $19,043,000. That included Gilbert and K through 8. We actually spent much more than that. We actually spent about $22,200,000 because we got money from the state to make up that difference. But from the town, it was $19,043,000. This year, they're asking for much more than that on the expense side. They're asking for a 7% increase or so. It's in the hands of the selectmen and the finance board, which are basically the same thing, some of whom don't have too much experience dealing with money and numbers or running a business. And they'll have to make up their mind how to balance this. I think the town this year has come in with a reasonable number. Paul Vare's done a pretty good job dealing with the people on the town. Not that they don't need more money, they probably do. But one of the things I think that Paul Vare is trying to do is to get people to look elsewhere for more money. For example, bonds, grants, mainly grants. So the town side looks like it'll be in pretty good shape in front of the selectmen. It's a small percentage of the budget, relatively speaking. The school side, however, is in a bit of a pickle. And the reason it's in a pickle is because we're moving 7th and 8th grade to Gilbert, which is good. Gilbert's done a wonderful job with their budget. Compared to last year, their budget's actually gone down 1% or so. But as they add 7th and 8th grade, they're moving 220 or so students up there. So they've had to add to their budget. Their budget went up from $5.5 million to roughly $7 million to take care of the 7th and 8th grades moving up there, getting some new books and things, and the normal increases you have in all the contracts for teachers' raises, support staff raises, and things like that. So when I looked at it, I thought that they weren't doing too bad a job from a numerical viewpoint. They still got to get the test scores up. There's still a lot of work that has to be done there. My own view is if they have 7th and 8th grade, they will not have an excuse if 8th graders come unprepared. Now, we all know that when the 8th graders come, a lot of 8th graders come prepared, of course. We also know that the St. Anthony's people, when they go to Gilbert, are very well prepared. They have a different form of management there at St. Anthony's than we do in our town schools, K through 8. But K through 8 has come in $1.5 million or so. I don't know, it might be a little different than that now. It changes quite rapidly. Even though they don't have 7th and 8th grade anymore. So numerically, it doesn't make much sense. We've transferred the people to Gilbert. We're going to close one school. So we've got 220 less people in the K through 8 system. Yet we want 1.6 million more this year. Mainly due to K through 8. Gilbert, by the way, has cut the cost per student by $3,000 a student up there. And they're in a process now of looking and trying to attract some people from China, a small number, 20 or so, to help add to their student base. They still have plenty of room up there, probably for a couple hundred more students, as I understand it. I did say on this program a few times that we should be, wherever we can, trying to get other people to come in here and go to our school. That may depend on the test grades, but I think more importantly it depends upon what the environment is in the town towards the school systems. Now, it's not too good in any town or city right now, in any state. There's a lot of pressure on teacher salaries, the health fees for all the employees in the school system. So it's pretty much a turmoil everywhere you go here now in America because of the recession. And it's unfortunate that people that aren't prepared for recessions get hit the hardest. And we're getting hit very hard right now in this budget area. So it looks like they're going to have to do some heavy surgery on the school budget. The K through 8 budget, even though they've moved 7th and 8th up, the kind of answer to that is, well, medical expenses have gone up, teacher salaries have gone up. Some of it's been, compensated for by concessions made by the teachers, especially in the medical area and in the salary area, but not enough to date. And then we had to hire more people in K through 8. I think the basic justification is, well, we were always behind anyway. And this newfound money we have, which has yet to be approved, we need to spend on more maintenance people, more support people, more teachers. Even though some will be retiring, some will be retiring early, some will be laid off, few, and some will be transferring to Gilbert. We're in a real pickle there. We're not in the best shape economically in the K through 8 area, which this year, next coming year will be the K through 6 area. And that'll all be coming out in the next few weeks as they make decisions on the budget. Now, as you all know, when you drive around, we do have problems here with the roads and other capital problems with bridges and things like that. And that's all coming to a head now. And it's all coming to a head when we're kind of broke. Now, this administration that's in the majority has always been blaming the last administration for the low fund balance. But they forget to tell you that the last administration tried to get 7% increase, and the town taxpayers wouldn't pay it. They forced them into a zero budget, so they had to use some of the fund balance money. There is a school that says they should have cut costs, but since we already got a lot of contracts that guarantee people increases, it's hard to do that. And we don't have too much control over the medical expenses. I mean, they can go up to 18% a year in a heartbeat. Now, you and your families, you don't have any choice. Now you're eating beans instead of steak. You'll be growing things in your garden instead of buying these expensive vegetables in the stores. Goes on and on. So we, the town, are in that sort of pickle. But this administration has done nothing to increase our revenue, profitable revenue, nothing. They're not even working on it. They're working on getting along with each other, and they're not even been able to do that. From what I can see, the Democratic Party, I see letters in the paper from one to the other and that kind of thing. All this hoo-ha about Lisa Smith, when she's doing a very good job, better than probably all the other Democrats put together. And I would say that Mike Renzullo, the Democrat, is doing much more with Lisa to try to help our situation than the other two are. Mike's trying to get in there, get some grants. He's trying to get some people in some of these buildings across the street. He's trying to raise money for his nonprofits. Whether he'll be successful or not, who knows? But the bottom line is, you got a tax increase last year, which is okay if you can afford it, in a recession, which is not good when people are out of jobs. And you may get a bigger one this year unless the selectmen find some way to manage this school situation and get it under control. When the Republicans in the last run wanted to move 7th and 8th grade up to Gilbert, which they have been successful at doing, they and the town manager thought that we could save quite a bit of money by closing one school, theoretically saving $12 million over the next 5 years, and by getting the cost down per student at Gilbert. And they should stick with that plan. We should get K-8 down into some reasonable amount. When you're downsizing and your budget goes up by over $1 million, that's not good. We also have to settle down the management there in the K-6 area next year. Keep the business manager, redefine the duties of the business manager and the superintendent. And next year we'll have half a superintendent for K-6 and half a superintendent for Gilbert. Now that's not the same as having one superintendent. I was in an education meeting the other week where they were worried about the Joint Finance Committee having an even number of people on it. They didn't have a tiebreaker. My view is if they had one superintendent responsible for the whole school system, K through 12, that would be the tiebreaker. Similar to the way they run the mayoral system in other cities. But they argued quite a bit in that meeting, discussed it for quite a long period of time, probably 45 minutes, when the answer is very simple. Now, I do think the Joint Finance Committee between the two schools is very good, no doubt about it. It's going to help, because if somebody asks Gilbert to give up some of their money when there's a cut, and that'll start this year, well, it'll really start next year, but it might start this year if we're lucky. They're going to ask to see some details from the K-6 budget. And when the K-6 people are cut disproportionately, they're going to ask to see some details from the Gilbert budget. And that, together with, if we can ever get it off the ground, our own financial director for the town gets to look at the budget and ask questions. Then we'll get all the facts out in the open. We'll be able to see farther down the railroad tracks, and we most likely won't hit the cow when we get there. So this administration has been a failure because they have not addressed the revenue problem. All the managers town managers we've had since I've been back, 5 or 6 of them, they all agree we need more revenue. We need to get this EDC pumped up. And we need to be more proactive and competitive with other cities and towns to get revenue into our town. So they've been a failure here. They're more worried about small things and not worried enough about the big picture. Now, I'm going to make a comparison for you on that. If you're married and you have one person in the household, either the husband or the wife, that's the breadwinner and provides most of the revenue for you to spend, and that person loses their job and goes on the dole because they can't find another one without moving to another state or somewhere around the country and upsetting the whole family, and maybe not even find a job then that pays as much as they had before, then you're going to have to tighten your belt, as you're probably doing now. And when you're tightening your belt, it doesn't do a lot of good to eat very fattening foods, to make it tougher and tougher to tighten your belt. So we're in a real pickle here. They can talk all they want about past administrations, but they've done nothing at all to increase the fund balance. And remember, a one-off sale of some land to a land trust is not the answer to our problem. That might even hurt us because we will have a false sense of security. What we need to do is get the real problem solved, address the real problem, and over many years, and it isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to take a lot of years now, especially with this recession hanging over our head, to get our financial ship back in balance. Now, most likely, any money we raise from taxes this year will not go to the fund balance. It'll most likely go to the capital, cleaning up the streets and all the capital things that need to be done over the next 5 years, and there's no doubt they need to be done. Or they'll go to the school and town budgets. So it's just a question of the balance. But there won't be any money that I know of going into the fund balance. Now I'm going to talk a bit about the EDC, and I'm going to show a picture here. One of our residents told me, Brian, there's some land up by the sewer plant that the state owns. You see a picture of it now. And a long time ago, they took it over to help flood victims in that area, one way or another. That's up by the sewer plant, which you see right now. And they offered to give it back to the state at one time free of charge, I'm told. I brought it up at the EDC meeting, and there was some concern about that land being having a lot of cliffs there. Well, the land doesn't have any cliffs, so I went up and took the pictures, and I'll give them out at the next EDC meeting. It's flat. There's quite a bit of land there. It's on both sides of the sewer plant. There is a river in back of it, so, you know, it's not the most gigantic piece in the world. And it is below, I'm pretty sure, although I haven't got official proof yet, that it's below the floodplain. So if we do take it from the state, and that's up to the town and the EDC to pursue that, if they deem it worthwhile, then it could probably be used for ball fields or some other activity that's legal to do in that area. I have a picture also of the Route 8, which you saw earlier in the program. That green on there is where the land is, and that break in the middle is where the sewer plant is. So you go north on Route 8, and that's where the land is. So again, it's probably just, if we can get it from the state for nothing, not a bad deal. And we can use it for a park maybe, or put some chairs in there and maybe some cookers or something, and we can, or use it for ball fields or playing fields or something else that's in that category. Now the EDC has a new chairman, William Pratt, been in there a while, has added 4 new members, one of which is myself, and it has a new sense of urgency because of a lot of things. One is they didn't have a big sense of urgency in the past, for a while anyway. The other is we have a recession now, and a lot of people out of jobs, and not many jobs coming to the area. And the housing prices have taken a swan dive because of the recession, and probably are still diving. And all the jobs related to these houses and the housing problem are not there anymore. Real estate people aren't booming now. Construction people aren't booming now. Builders aren't building now. Gas prices are $4 a gallon. People aren't traveling as much now. And when they don't travel, they don't go to restaurants and other places like that, stores. They do more locally, or they do without, most likely. And there's no real sign here that in the short term, we're going to be in any better shape. And that's why I say these present selectmen have backed us into a corner and painted us into a corner. We're in deep trouble. So we got to all get together and try to get some more revenue in town. And if we have one commissioner or another in town that's dragging its feet, trying to slow things down in that area, that's not going to help us. Now, on a more of an upbeat scale, we have a new town historian in town. And her name is Mildred Hudak. Our last town historian passed away over the last year or so. He was from Winchester, and he was very good. Mildred Hudak has been working around town in many capacities, and I'm pretty sure she's been in the Historical Society since 1990. I went up there with my wife on Saturday. We spent 4 hours with Mildred. She was very good to us and very informative. I was on a mission when I went there to find out certain information, and I got it all. And I've been bouncing ideas off of her for the last week or so, and we'll do more in the future. But I don't remember reading in the paper anywhere. I don't think it was announced, probably. And I might be wrong. Maybe I missed it. That Mildred Hudak was our new town of Winchester historian. Now, the EDC has taken a great interest in the history of our town and the Historical Society because it's all positive information. There's people in our Historical Society that in the past, when they were alive, were very important, not only to the town, but to the state and the world. You had a governor of the state of Connecticut. You had a Medal of Honor winner in the Civil War. That's Caleb Beach's house you see there, because that's where our history began. He was our first settler. You had a person who wrote the first Centennial Annals that also was a friend of John Brown and had a very colorful life, and was prominent in the state government. You had a couple clockmakers. Gilbert's name stands out more than perhaps the others, but the others before him were equally as important. Their clocks went out around the world. You had a writer, David Halberstam, who was known worldwide for his books that he wrote, and was a very positive person. And that historical society, those are just a few examples. They're chock full of interesting people that were residents and citizens in the town of Winchester. So I have talked to some people, some of them in their 90s, some in their 50s and 60s, that have never been to the Historical Society to see that treasure trove of information that Millie has and her predecessors have put together up there. They're open mainly in the summer, but they are open by appointment in the winter as well for, I guess they're open one day a week, and then by on call if somebody, a group of Boy Scouts or somebody like that wants to go through. There is plenty of parking up there once you know where it is. It's in back of the firehouse. You know, there's a little parking there for maybe 20 cars or so. And it's really, really important to us in our history. Now, I'm starting a new program on Channel 13, and I'll probably be showing it a little bit down in Torrington as well. And that program will be called Some Local History. I've always been interested in history, because I too come from a town that is deep and rich in its historical background, being around since the founding of America. I tend to like biographies. I've got a lot of biographies that I've read over the years. I use them for my own examples for my own self-development and my children's development. So I've always been interested. So I'm going to have a new program. And the new program is mainly, over the next few years, to help bring everybody in town up to date on the rich history in our past. So the first one will be on April 27th, 2011. On a Wednesday night, I think it's going to be at 8 o'clock. Keep your eye out on the calendar on Channel 13, where I'll be talking a bit about Frank H. DeMars in the early 1900s. He was a very famous man in this town, very well known, and as far as I can see, he had very little baggage. People don't say much bad about Frank H. DeMars. He wrote the Bicentennial History book. He took 5,000 photographs of the area, not just Winsted, but surrounding towns as well, and some out of state. He suggested that the town be named the Laurel City, and his contemporaries followed through with that and got us the name. And he was along with many others, involved in setting up the Laurel Festival, which is still going to this day. So that'll be my first program. After that, I'll probably do one on the Historical Society, and then I want to break it down and start talking about individuals and places, events, things like that in our history. The show will be repeated on May 4th, 2011, May 11th, 2011, and then perhaps a little after that, it'll be the same program in support of some Frank H. DeMars picture exhibitions that are going to happen in this town, and some historical discussion that will be happening at the Beardsley and Memorial Library about DeMars. So I wanted to tell you about that. Keep an eye out for it. I already wrote the script for the first one. I'll start working now on the script for the second one. These shows will all be repeated 3 times. And I think you'll find them very interesting. I'm getting a big kick out of doing it. I'm learning a lot. I'm lucky to have somebody like Mildred to help out with all the facts, fact gathering. And she knows just where to go to get the right information. Plus the internet's a big help as well. You can find a lot of stuff on the internet. When you go back 100 years, it's a little harder, unless somebody's extremely well known like Gilbert. But closer, in the last 30, 40 years, you can get a lot of information off the internet about people in this area: Colebrook, Winsted, Barkhamsted, Litchfield County, of all areas. So anyway, keep your eye out for that. And part of it is to support my and the EDC's vision that our image is very important in Winsted, very important. And we want everybody to understand and to become proud of this image, and to help us to sell it to more adventurous people that want to come to our town and help us to have a better lifestyle, help satisfy our wants and needs, and help increase the revenue, recurring, profitable tax revenue that we need to get out of this corner that we've been backed into. And that some members of the people in town are trying to keep us in that corner. You can't believe that, but that's true. There are people that don't want us to succeed financially. They want the town to be like it was in either 1850 or 1950, with one exception. They don't want the industry that made it profitable for us. I looked in some history pictures, and I saw that the graduating class at Gilbert, at the height of our industrial power and richness, when we had buildings on both sides of Main Street, we lost a lot of tax money in the '55 flood because it wiped out the whole tax base on the other side of Main Street, which was all business, which is very profitable tax. And we haven't recovered. We haven't recovered since. And we can recover. There's no reason we can't. But it's harder to recover if you have to drag people along that are trying to slow you down. It's not good at all. So I want to be at the forefront. I want to try to help the town recover. It takes a lot of time, a lot of work. I happen to have the time, where other people don't. So I'll use it to the best advantage that I can. So that's what we're trying to do. Now, I did put forward 2 proposals. One got in the newspaper, one hasn't yet. One is for a Hall of Fame, so we can get all of Mildred's information out to the public. And one is for a Frank H. DeMars Day on the day of the Laurel Parade, where we can have exhibits of his work and perhaps some laurel plants put around town for that weekend. These still have to be approved by the EDC and the selectmen, and that's what I'm working on now, putting together position papers, getting as much feedback as I can, trying to shape these activities, and then I will be working on that program. Plus I'll be doing a lot of the legwork for the EDC together with my fellow commissioners to try to make this the most successful EDC ever, despite all the obstacles. A lot of people say, you're wasting your time, Brian. It's not worth your time. I've heard that all my life. But I've always, one way or another, been able to help people succeed. Who thought the internet would be where it is today, 20 years ago? Who thought we'd be able to get to the moon the way we did? So it's just a question of making up your mind to do it, putting together an effort, a sustained effort, and then managing it and not being sidetracked by the nasty comments or people who throw tomatoes or any of that kind of thing. We have to keep moving on. Now, we do have some other opportunities in town that are tough now because of the recession. But what we have to do now, just like you have to plant your victory garden this summer and get it all ready for the next 4 or 5 years, so you won't have to pay so much for carrots and lettuce and all the things you buy. You also have to cut back on your diet. Pardon me. Well, we have to prepare now, too, for when the recession ends. So we got to get in shape. And that's what the EDC is going to try to help us do to the best of our ability. And there's a bunch of good people there. They represent all walks of life in this town. So I think you're going to find there will be successful. And I'm going to be bringing you up to date as much as I can on this program. But remember, all the comments I make on this program are mine, not those of the EDC, unless I specifically say so. So we have a development that's sitting in foreclosure, I believe, up on Wallens Hill. They were going to develop 100 homes up there in the good old days. It's sitting there now. It's the old Weigold farm. It's sitting there empty. It's got some roads in. It's got some water and sewer in. It's got a couple houses built that I think are empty. So the EDC is going to try to help one way or another to get that thing off the ground. It won't be easy. It'll take a lot of years. You have to maybe even consider other uses of the land, talk to the owner, the bank that owns it, see if we can come out of there. We have the state property going up Route 8, won't be provide us with any income or anything, but maybe another park or sport field or sporting fields. This all adds up in the long run. We have the Berlinski proposing 27-acre business park on Route 8 South. There was an article in the paper about it the other day in the Register, and when I looked on the internet for it to see what the comments were, it wasn't even on the internet. Sometimes these newspapers aren't a big help. Sometimes they're a great help. But the Berlinski property could be great for us over the years. Won't happen right away. It might take 10, 15 years, maybe at best 5 years. The big problem is we got to get water and sewer there. There are other pieces of property in town. There are buildings in town that we've got to get sold. Got to get them inhabited. We all got to pull together to do that. Nobody knows exactly what the best answer is. But one of the things that I think, Brian thinks we need to do, is be more responsive to the needs of the people that are looking for the properties. We got to be able to do deals with these people. We got to be able to give them tax breaks where necessary to get them in here. We've got to be able to be flexible with our zoning policies. And we have to be able to really listen and understand the needs of our customers. That's the people we want to get into this town, because they won't come here if we don't satisfy their needs. And if they don't come here, then we're going to be stuck where we are now. And we'll probably have, I think over the last 10 years, we have gained 500 people or so, one way or another here. But our revenue is decreasing, and has been for quite a while, and will continue to be unless we manage it. It must be managed. So if you want to see some interesting things, look at Channel 15 the next few nights, including tonight, and you'll see the selectmen talking about the budgets. And then, of course, in the next selectmen meeting, they'll talk about the budgets. And they're going to have to make a decision sooner or later about how much to either add to or cut from the budgets, how much capital money they want to ask the taxpayers for at the town meeting and the town budget referendum. That's all happening in the next month or two. Keep an eye out for my history program last week in April. That'll give a little respite from this sad situation we're in. And if you have any ideas at all on how to improve the revenue situation in this town, please get a hold of Bill Pratt, William Pratt. He's the chairman of the EDC, Economic Development Commission, and you can reach him at Town Hall. Just write to William Pratt, care of Town Hall, Winston, Connecticut, 06098. Chairman of the Economic Development Commission. Or if you know any commission members, tell them what your ideas are. We're looking for ideas. We're trying to generate things, make them happen. And we'll listen to everybody who has an idea. And we'll try not to say that your idea won't work for 1,000 reasons. What we want to try to do is get the idea on the table where everybody can discuss it, and then eliminate all the reasons why it can't be done. That's called positive thinking. Not all the reasons it can't be done, but what you have to do is, when people say, here's the reason it can't be done, then you got to try to turn them into reasons it can be done. Eliminate the excuses. Because unfortunately, the excuses are what you usually hear. If you put out something for feedback, and I've been doing quite a bit of that, people will tell you, here's a way you can improve the situation. And you have to be person enough to be able to accept that feedback and act upon it. So we have a lot of things, irons in the fire now at the EDC. I can't talk about all of them here now, but you can read the minutes of the EDC. We meet every 2 weeks. And you're going to see that we're gaining momentum. We're going to get a lot of projects on the table to be discussed. Some won't make it, some will. Some will take a different flavor perhaps than we thought they would when we first discussed them. But it's only by doing it out in the open, on the table with everybody. There's no secret agenda here in the EDC. No secret agenda. We're telling you, we want to go after revenue. We're chartered to do so. We need the help of the whole committee to be able to do it. We need the whole town, and they'll do it. As a matter of fact, the surrounding towns. We all got to work together. We got to get some industry into town. That doesn't mean the old-fashioned manufacturers that dump things in the lake and all, and then in the river. We're talking more about light industry nowadays, like we have now already. And people say to me, Brian, we'll never get any industry in this town. I'll say, well, why do we have all the industry here that we've got now? We just found out that there's probably 4 more spaces in one of the industrial parks that we can work on. EDC's looking into that with the landowner. So there are opportunities here. And we can't say it can't be done. Because if you say it can't be done, it won't be done. And you would never say to your children, you'll never be a success child for all these reasons. That wouldn't be wise. You want to find out how to make them the success they want to be, and that's a movable feast. May not be the same success you want them to be. And then you try to help them make it. You coach them. Now, one of the problems in Winsted is we don't have a united view of what we want to be. So we, the EDC, are going to put out what we think we want to see. And again, it may never get out the door. I'm telling you what Brian's trying to do, not what the EDC is going to do. But we are going to have representatives on the implementation committee for the POCD, and we will try to represent the EDC's interest as best we can, because that's what we are chartered to do. And we'd be failing the town if we didn't do it. With that, I want to say thank you. Tune in again, pay attention to the selectmen meetings, go up and see the Historical Society, give them a call up there first, or go knock on the door, and spread the word, because we want everybody to know how rich our past was and how rich our future can be. Thank you.